It was a Thanksgiving unlike any other, and the memory of it still haunts me. I was a young man at the time, eager to spend the holiday with my family. Little did I know it would turn into a nightmare that would linger in my mind forever. My journey to our family home was uneventful. The crisp November air was filled with the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw the house adorned with festive decorations. It looked welcoming, a stark contrast to the unease that would soon envelop us. The day began normally. The house was filled with laughter, the kitchen buzzing with activity. But as the afternoon wore on, a sense of unease began to creep in. It started with a knock at the door, a knock that seemed to echo through the house with an unnatural resonance. When I opened it, there was no one there. I shrugged it off as a prank by local kids. Later, while helping to set the table, I noticed something odd in the reflection of the dining room mirror. A shadowy figure stood in the corner, barely visible yet unmistakably there. I spun around, but there was nothing. I mentioned it to my mother, who simply laughed it off, saying my imagination was running wild. Dinner was served, and the atmosphere was jovial. However, as we ate, the lights flickered briefly, casting eerie shadows across the room. A sense of dread filled me, but again I tried to brush it off. Then, as we were clearing the table, I heard it. A faint whispering, almost inaudible. It seemed to be coming from the basement. I told myself it was just the wind, but something deep inside me knew it was something else. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I decided to investigate. I slowly made my way to the basement door, my heart pounding in my chest. As I descended the stairs, the whispering grew louder, more distinct, yet still unintelligible. In the basement, I was met with a sight that froze my blood. Scrawled on the walls were symbols I didn't recognize, and in the center of the room was an old, decrepit book. The whispering seemed to emanate from it. I felt an overwhelming sense of malice emanating from the book, as if it were alive. Suddenly, the house shook violently, as if in the grip of an earthquake. I heard screams from upstairs. I raced back, only to find the dining room in chaos. Chairs overturned, the table askew, and my family, they were different. Their eyes were glazed over, their mouths moving in silent screams. I confronted the entity, demanding it release my family. The room grew colder, and the shadowy figure I'd seen earlier materialized before me. Its form was indistinct, shifting like smoke, its eyes glowing with malevolence. I don't know where the strength came from, but I lunged at the figure, clutching the old book. As I did, the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. The figure shrieked, a sound that was both inhuman and filled with agony. With a final burst of energy, I threw the book into the fireplace. As it burned, the figure dissolved into nothingness, and the house fell silent. My family snapped out of their trance, confused and scared, but unharmed. We never spoke of that night. The house was sold and we moved far away. But the memory of that Thanksgiving horror remains with me. I sometimes wonder if what we experienced was real or a shared hallucination. But deep down, I know the truth. We had encountered something truly evil, and by some miracle, we survived. This story, a blend of real-life elements and fictional horror, serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the true terror lies not in what we see, but in what we can't understand. It was Thanksgiving Day, 2018, and I was excited. As a college student, I'd been away from home for months, and the thought of Mom's cooking had me practically drooling. I reached our family cabin nestled in the woods of Maine just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows through the dense forest. The cabin, an old, creaky structure passed down for generations, always had a spooky aura. But tonight, it felt different. As I approached, the lights were off, which was odd since I had told my parents my arrival time. I assumed they were out getting last-minute supplies. I unlocked the door, and the familiar musty scent of old wood and memories hit me. But there was something else, a faint metallic odor I couldn't place. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the cabin's age. The inside was dark, the only light from the flickering fireplace casting ghostly shadows. I called out, "Mom! Dad!" No response. A sliver of unease wormed into my gut. I decided to light some candles to drive away the darkness. That's when I saw it. On the kitchen table, a note in my mom's handwriting, "Gone to Aunt Mary's, back soon, dinner's in the fridge, love you." But something was off. The note was smudged, as if written in haste. I opened the fridge and there it was, a beautifully roasted turkey, Mom's famous stuffing and all the trimmings. My stomach growled, but my unease grew. They never left without texting me. I decided to call them, but my phone had no signal, not unusual for our secluded spot. I tried the landline, but it was dead. That's when panic started to creep in. It wasn't just off, it was cut. The wire hung loosely from the wall, frayed edges speaking of a hasty disconnection. A sound upstairs snapped my attention. Footsteps? No, too heavy for that. A dragging sound, slow and deliberate. My heart pounded in my chest. I grabbed the largest kitchen knife and tiptoed towards the stairs. The old wooden steps groaned under my weight, betraying my presence. The dragging stopped. Silence. Then, a low, guttural growl echoed down the staircase. It was unlike anything I'd heard, not human, not animal. I wanted to run, but I had to know. My family could be in danger. I reached the top and peered down the dark hallway. My hand trembled, casting flickering shadows with the candle. Then I saw it, at the far end of the hall. A figure, hunched over, too tall to be human, its limbs elongated and unnatural. Its head snapped towards me, revealing glowing yellow eyes. A primal fear seized me. I stumbled backwards, tumbling down the stairs. I heard it coming after me, its movements erratic like a puppet on broken strings. I scrambled to my feet and bolted out the door into the cold night. I ran through the woods, branches whipping my face, the growls of the creature growing distant. I didn't stop until I reached Aunt Mary's house several miles away. Breathless, I banged on her door. She opened it, shock on her face as she saw my disheveled state. Behind her, to my relief and confusion, were my parents, safe and sound. They'd been here the whole time, their phones left at the cabin. I told them what happened, my words tumbling out in a frantic jumble. They listened, faces growing pale. My dad called the police, but when they investigated, they found nothing. No creature, no signs of forced entry, nothing amiss except the cut phone line. They suggested it was a burglar, or perhaps my imagination fueled by the eerie atmosphere of the old cabin. But I know what I saw and heard. It wasn't human, and it wasn't my imagination. To this day, the memory haunts me. We never found out what was in the cabin that night. Every Thanksgiving, I'm reminded of the terror, the yellow eyes in the darkness, and the unshakable feeling that something was waiting in our family cabin. Something ancient, something evil. The cabin remains unused, a silent sentinel in the woods, and I can't help but wonder if it's still there, waiting in the shadows. I never thought Thanksgiving could turn into a horror story until that fateful night, an experience so surreal it still sends chills down my spine. It was November 2015, in a small town where everyone knew each other. Our family Thanksgiving dinner was a tradition, hosted at my Uncle Jack's old farmhouse. The house, dating back to the early 1900s, had always given me an eerie feeling, with its creaking floors and wind-whistling windows. That evening, the air was crisp and fallen leaves crunched underfoot as we arrived. The warm glow from the house promised a night of laughter and good food. My cousins, Sarah and Mike, greeted us with their usual playful banter. Inside, the atmosphere was cozy. The aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie filled the air, and the sound of chatter and clinking glasses set the mood. After dinner, as the adults settled in the living room, I decided to explore the upstairs, a place that always intrigued me. The hallway was dimly lit. The old portraits on the walls seemed to watch me as I walked. That's when I heard it, a faint whisper, almost like a child's voice coming from the end room. Curiosity overcame my initial fear. I slowly approached the room, the whispers growing clearer. "Help me," it said. I reached for the doorknob, my heart pounding in my chest, and pushed the door open. The room was empty, just an old bed and a dusty window. The whispering stopped. Confused, I turned to leave, but then the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness. Panic set in. I banged on the door, yelling for help, but no one came. The air turned icy cold and I could see my breath. Then a soft sobbing sound filled the room. Terrified, I stumbled around, searching for a light switch. When the lights flickered on, I gasped. There in the corner was the translucent figure of a young boy, his eyes brimming with tears. He looked at me, his voice a mere whisper. They forgot about me. My mind raced with confusion. Who was he? What did he mean? I asked him who he was, but he just kept repeating those words. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished, leaving me alone in the now silent room. When I finally got the door open, I rushed downstairs, my mind a whirlwind of fear and disbelief. I blurted out what happened, but everyone laughed it off as a Thanksgiving ghost story, a product of my overactive imagination, but I couldn't shake off the experience. Next day, driven by a need for answers, I visited the local library. After hours of digging through old town records, I stumbled upon a shocking discovery. In the early 1900s, a young boy, the son of the original farmhouse owner, had mysteriously disappeared. The case was never solved, and the boy was never found. The revelation sent shivers down my spine. Had I encountered the spirit of the lost boy? Was his presence a lingering reminder of a forgotten tragedy? That Thanksgiving night changed my perspective on the supernatural. The experience remains etched in my memory, a chilling reminder that sometimes reality can be stranger and more terrifying than fiction.